Well, hi everybody and welcome to Condo Cues. I'm Sandy Wagner, currently the president of the Vancouver Island Strata Owners Association, and my co-host is
Ryan Stenquist. I'm the founder of Condo Clear Services.
Welcome. So if you haven't tuned in before, what we're doing is every 2 weeks, every second and fourth Tuesday, second and fourth Tuesday, we're bringing you about a half-hour segment on a topic of interest to strata owners. So we'll have about 10-15 minutes to chat about the topic of today, and then we'll have 10 or 15 minutes for your questions. So go ahead and send them in. We'll keep an eye on the laptop and see if we can answer them live. If you're tuning in afterwards from the taped segment, still send us your questions and we can answer them later on.
Absolutely, yeah. And the other thing too is if anybody has any topics that they'd like us to discuss, by all means, send us ideas.
Absolutely. So tonight we're going to be talking about best practices for service providers in the strata, and that's a big topic for sure.
Yeah. Before we get into that, I want to talk about this weekend.
Okay.
So some of you may have been there or heard about it, but we had Visoa put on an awesome panel about strata, and it seemed like it was quite the success.
Yeah, it was, hence the topic. Yeah. It was called Strata Success.
Yes.
So we talked about a dozen topics of interest to strata owners, things that are happening in the future and things that are happening now. And we had a panel of 9 strata experts, Ryan being one of them. And everybody in the room, I think, left pretty happy with the panel. Yeah. It went over very well.
Yeah, no, it was very enjoyable. 4 hours. At first, I was a little bit skeptical that we were going to fill 4 hours with interesting strata topics, but we still had questions coming in, and the conversation flowed really well.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it always helps having Justin Hansen there. I mean,
yeah.
The guy's a great strata lawyer. Shout out, Justin.
Yeah, and a walking encyclopedia.
He's quite entertaining to listen to speak to.
Yes.
He's a good guy to have on the panel.
Yeah, exactly. Because strata can be a little dry, especially when you're talking about strata law.
Absolutely.
But Justin always makes it interesting, as did Ryan for your part.
No, thank you. I try.
Yeah, it was really good.
So yeah, today we're talking about relationships and service providers. This was actually a topic that came up a number of times through the panel about the relationships between strata council and the management and communication and kind of best practices to optimize that. But a part of that puzzle is the service providers and relationships with them. A lot of people kind of view them as, they're the guys that cut our grass and wash our windows, but they're an integral part of a successful strata corporation.
Yeah,
so
if they're not doing their job well, everybody notices it.
Absolutely.
You know, whether, and like the examples you gave, whether it's the people cutting your grass or doing your windows, whether it's a big project and you've hired a project manager to tackle a bigger project, it affects everybody in the strata, and they're for sure all going to notice.
Yeah.
So it's important to keep those relationships going.
Absolutely. I think the overriding theme, it seems like every show we have a bit of a theme throughout the show, and I think this one's going to be relationships is where I view it anyways.
Absolutely.
A lot of people tend to look at the price first and foremost, which of course is a very important aspect of it, but I think the relationship itself as a whole is a much more important factor.
Yeah, exactly, and we're going to absolutely talk about that several times through on our list of bullet points to get to. So starting off with maintenance schedules.
Yes, so first place that I always started when I took over a building or had a new building, new construction building come up, is look at the documents, look at what kind of components there are, and draft a simple maintenance schedule. I mean, this isn't something that needs to be all-encompassing or extremely detailed. You can put it together in a basic spreadsheet in a matter of an hour or a couple hours.
So every X months we do Z.
Yes. Yeah. If you want window washing once a year or twice a year,
wouldn't that be nice?
Decide which months you want those in. Put it into the schedule. Things like dryer vent cleaning, that'll happen every couple of years, or plumbing stat cleaning that happen every 3 or 4 years. That sort of stuff.
And you're not going to get it right off the hop, you know. But as you go through a few cycles, you'll learn what you missed or what you should have done a bit more often, and just start there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and having that schedule will help to not miss things too, because especially those items that don't happen on a regular basis, i.e. every year, like dryer vent cleaning.
When did we last do that?
Well, exactly, and especially in stratas, I mean, you can have a lot of changeover in strata council members, you can have a lot of changeover in management over the years, so you don't want to be in a position where you're looking back historically about when the last time the
looking through the filing
cleaned.
cabinet for the invoice to see when you last
did. And in the meantime, especially with something like plumbing stat cleaning, I mean, you have a blockage, and that could potentially cost the strata corporation tens of thousands of dollars.
Prevent preventative maintenance is definitely the way to go.
Yeah.
And again, building a good relationship with somebody like your plumbing stat cleaner guy.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, getting those relationships means you can call them up at 4 o'clock on a Friday and they might come see you and not charge you too much extra.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. And we'll talk about that a little bit more too, but that's the value versus price, which I've got as a bullet point to talk about in a little bit. So first off, drafting a maintenance schedule. Second thing, you have your maintenance schedule, you need to get work done. Who do you go to?
Exactly.
How do you decide who to pick?
How do you decide? Yeah. There's a link on our Vizoa website to the Strata forum, and we asked a service provider to set that up for us.
Oh, perfect.
As a place where Strata owners can talk to other Strata owners about, hey, who do you use to cut your grass? Are you happy with them? Referrals. Yeah. But other than that, I mean, there's good old Mr. Google. Works great. You can check the online listings for different Strata resource outfits like Vizoa and that other one in Vancouver that I can never remember their name. but the business members who belong to associations such as Vizoa is a good place to start. Not that we're guaranteeing their work, but it's a place. It's a listing of companies. Your management company can certainly point you in the right direction if you're professionally managed, or if you drive by a Strata and you say, geez, these gardens look great. Wonder who their gardener is. Ring the doorbell and ask.
One thing I wanted to touch on there is management companies. Assuming you have a good management company, they should have a great resource of service providers to pick from. In my experience, you sometimes run into council members or Strata owners that are a little bit leery about using preferred contractors from the management company because there's conspiracy theories that there's kickbacks and all that sort of stuff. In my experience, I've never seen that happen or been offered or anything along those lines whatsoever. But as a Strata manager for years, the reason why I dealt with my preferred service providers was because we had a long-standing relationship with them. If something went wrong, the 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon or the water leak in the middle of the night, I know those guys are going to be there at the drop of a hat.
Exactly. And of course, the other benefit of going with a supplier from your management company's list of preferred providers is they might be able to get you a bit of a discount because they've got 100 properties or 200 properties that are using the same plumber, the same window cleaner. And so there's a bit of a volume discount, which of course they pass along to the client. They don't take it in their pocket. I promise you they don't.
They definitely should not be. And I don't think that's a practice in the industry whatsoever.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
But who knows? Maybe we're in the management pocket too.
That's true. I don't know. Where's your trip to Tahiti? Are you in the management company's pocket?
I wish. So management companies are a great resource. And just going back to Google, and obviously the internet is a very powerful tool. The nice thing is you got Google reviews, you got Yelp, you've got word of mouth basically through the internet. I mean, sometimes you have to take those reviews with a grain of salt, but ultimately, if you have one service provider that has a bunch of 4-star ratings
and one or two bad ones,
one that has 2-star ratings, well, I mean, generally speaking, you're probably going to get some indication. And as for references too, I mean,
definitely.
Any service provider that's been around for a long time, they're likely going to be busy, and they're going to have references with other Strata corporations that if they're doing a good job, they're more than happy to share.
Yeah, exactly. And it's important to get those Strata corporation references as opposed to general references if you can, because the Strata corporation as a client is a little different than another type of client.
I'm going to talk about that a little bit in further on. So you found a couple different service providers or one service provider that you want to maybe have work for you. What's the next step?
Everybody's going to answer this for me. Get 3 quotes. You don't need 3 quotes. That's a myth.
Yes.
It's a common practice, and it's probably a fairly good business practice, but there's nothing wrong with getting 2 quotes if there's only 2 good service providers in your town. Nothing wrong with getting 6 or 7 quotes. There's no law that says you need to get 3 quotes.
Yeah, no, there isn't. And this is something that was always a little bit of a bee in my bonnet as a property manager.
The Strata would say, go on, get us 3 quotes.
Which there is definitely a time and place for that.
Sure.
If you're looking at big capital cost expenditures, you're doing your roof, you're doing the elevator, you're tiling the lobby, that sort of stuff. Absolutely, get 3 quotes, and perhaps even a consultant, which we'll talk about a little bit as well. But generally speaking, if you're getting window washing done, if you're getting your landscaping quoted, if you're getting your janitorial quoted, that sort of stuff, again, this is where a management company can come in very handy because they're constantly quoting for different buildings.
So they have an idea. They've got the
You have a fairly good idea of where things should fall. And quite honestly, if you're looking at say window washing quotes, and you have one company that's going to charge you $2,000, another company that's going to charge you $1,000, I'd be very leery about the company that's going to charge you $1,000.
Yeah.
Assuming that $2,000 is around the general market.
Yeah, if they've got a squeeze bottle on a stick and they're going to put it up there, or if they got proper equipment.
There's typically a reason for that, and again, that's that conversation of value versus price.
Yeah.
Are you getting what you pay for? And typically when you're paying a cheaper price, that's exactly what you're getting.
Not always. Sometimes there's some good bargain companies out there, but again, that goes back to checking the references.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I totally just lost my train of thought too.
That's okay. We'll come back to it.
Quote rules. So one of the things that I always did that seemed to work really well for both my council members and saving management time, because obviously that's a huge aspect of it too, is making sure that your time is going towards the right places rather than spending 3 hours to save $50.
Yes.
Common practice I did was get 2 quotes. And you know what, if both of those quotes are relatively close, then you know that you're within the ballpark of what the market is. Yeah. If you do get 2 quotes and they're completely different, then you might want to get a couple more. Then you might want to get one just to see where it's at. Again, if it's something that's a little bit more specialized and not one of those routine things. Yeah,
and that even ties back to the service provider that you've had for years. Maybe you think, I'm not getting charged a fair price. Is there a better price out there? So every so often, even though you've had the same company doing your gardens for years or your windows for years, every so often get a couple of new quotes and then compare them to what you're currently paying.
Yeah, that's a good point that I didn't think of to mention. But reviewing your contracts on a 2 or 3 or 4 year basis is just good business practice.
Yeah, because you wouldn't keep the same contractor forever. You always have to go out and get a new quote every now and again.
Yes, absolutely. So comparing quotes, once you have the quotes in your hand, how do you decide which one's the best?
Yeah, well, hopefully you've given them some specs to quote on. You know, you haven't just said, how much will you charge us to do our gardens? You've said, how much will you charge us to mow the lawn twice a month and weed the flower beds monthly? And you've listed out some tasks. And so they're quoting on the same things. Absolutely. They're not going to be exactly the same, but you really do have to just lay it out and tick off the boxes and say, okay, these people have missed this and this company is going to do everything. And really just compare them that way. And the dollar value might weed one out right away.
Yep, exactly. And that's a great point, and I can't stress that enough, is make sure you have some idea of what the scope of work is going to be that you can provide to the contractors. Because again, you can have multiple contractors come in, they're all quoting on different things. Now you're comparing quotes that really aren't comparable because you're looking at apples and oranges. You want an apples and apples comparison.
Exactly, and I can give you a really good example of that at my last Strata, if anybody's watching, hello. We needed to have our interior pool painted, the walls and the pool deck itself. And so we phoned 3 or 4 painting companies and said, hey, quote on painting this for us. And the quotes were wildly different. They were crazy different. And it's because they were all quoting using different types of paint, different types of prep. And we didn't know that. So we found a company that would handle the quoting process for us. And we paid them a small sum of money to put out our project to tender. He set the specifications for us. And so we had proper quotes. And so that's kind of it's a small project, but it's the same philosophy as if you're doing a huge project. So we learned a lot from that. And we learned from that when hiring the window washers, the gardeners, to just make sure they're quoting on the same thing. Lesson learned the hard way.
And that's a great point, is consultants can easily pay for themselves. So things like painting is a great example, because you can hire a consultant, like you said, to draw up the specs, do the bidding, get the quotes for you,
and check on their work as they go.
Then that's a separate contract, and quite often what they do is they'll charge a set fee for obtaining the quotes or putting the job out to tender, and then they'll charge a percentage of the overall project to basically be the project manager and oversee the quality.
And it really is money well spent.
Absolutely. In that case, they're working directly for the Strata Corporation, and even great property managers typically aren't going to have the base of knowledge that a professional paint consultant is, or a roof project manager. And that's typically not a part of a Strata manager's contract anyways. You'd likely, and I used to laugh because we charged extra for doing special projects.
Without the special
typically
knowledge.
My hourly rate was higher than what you could bring in the consultants for anyways. So you're better off just going right to the source and have a consultant involved. And typically, if I remember correctly, paint consultants were usually about 5 to 10% of the overall project price, which if you look at it, especially if it's a bigger project, if it's a $100,000 project, for instance, if you get an extra year out of that paint,
Oh, yeah.
you've more than
You've
paid for
it,
that.
for sure.
And the quality difference is significant.
Yeah, exactly.
I've found in my experience. Anyways.
So a project like painting the pool is a little different than hiring a gardener or hiring a cleaner, but the same philosophy applies for sure. Yeah. Make sure they're quoting on the same thing.
Exactly, which brings us to contracts, of course. A lot of these jobs are going to come down to a contract. Again, if you're looking at landscaping, janitorial, window washing, that sort of stuff, typically it's quite straightforward. You don't necessarily need a lot of guidance on that. But when you're looking at bigger projects like replacing the windows or doing the roof,
get your lawyer to help with that contract.
Get a lawyer involved. Another big one too is elevator contracts, because typically elevator contracts are going to be a minimum of 5 years.
Yeah,
and more often they're 10 plus years.
And the cancellation periods can be tricky.
Yes,
same with
there's
your
sometimes
waste management providers.
Renewal clauses and stuff in there that you don't want to necessarily get caught in. So those are contracts that are a lot more sophisticated, and it's not a bad idea to have your lawyer look at them so you know exactly what you're getting into. One of the things, and this is a little bit of an aside, but one of the things that's happening around Victoria right now is TELUS is putting in fiber optic cables in a lot of buildings, and they have a contract, but of course you're giving easements and that sort of stuff away. So those types of things are good to
your
have
lawyer
your lawyer look at.
Double check it. Because it's money well spent. You don't want to be locked into a contract that you can't break, or that has unfavorable terms. But for those smaller contracts like the janitor or the gardener or the window washer, they've probably got something fairly standard that they use. They'll tailor it to your needs, and it doesn't have to be full of legalese. A very simple contract is all you need. Just this is the duties we'll do, this is the price we'll charge, this is how often we'll get paid, and when you can terminate it. Usually terminate on 30 days notice by either party.
It kind of goes back to that good fences make good neighbors kind of mentality. When you know the relationship that you're getting into, if both parties are aware of it, then that goes a long way to preventing any kind of conflict or issues down the road. So you don't find yourself having to go through the CRT.
We don't want you to go to the CRT. We want you to have these good relationships with your service providers, for sure.
And that brings us to relationship, and we've talked about that a little bit already. But to me, and this is going to be subjective, it's different for everybody, of course, because there are lots of factors such as price, where to me the long-term relationship is one of the most important things, because again, you have that after-hours leak, or you have the 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon phone call. I always said back before I got into management, I was in sales, and I always told my clients that I can't promise I'll never mess up, but what I can promise is that if I do mess up, I'll take care of you.
Yes.
And you get that kind of perk or benefit that's an intangible that comes with a long-term relationship.
Yeah, exactly. Where if you change gardeners every 6 or 8 months, word gets around town, and nobody might even want to be your gardener.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good segue into one of the other things I want to talk about is stratas aren't necessarily the most desirable clients for a lot of service providers. There's a lot of challenges dealing with stratas, even good stratas, is because you are getting quotes. You have you have a group of owners that you have to answer to, so you want to make sure you do your due diligence.
And the strata can't make that decision as soon as the quotes come in. They have to wait for the council meeting.
There's a committee involved. Oftentimes there's a lot of back and forth, especially when it comes to the scope of work or preferences for service providers. So quite oftentimes you can have a service provider come out, give you a quote. It's 6 months before they hear back from the Strata Corporation. By that time, the prices may have shifted.
Prices may have shifted up, or maybe they're all booked up.
Exactly, and you run into, and I'm not saying all stratas out there do this, but you run into situations where there is a lot of shopping around to an excessive point. I've seen basic landscaping contracts go through 9 or 10 quotes, which is excessive in my opinion. And another practice that I won't say is common, but it happens more often than it should, is stratas or people in general taking quotes from one service provider and giving them to another service provider and saying, hey, can you beat this? And that is completely inappropriate, ethically and legally. You should not be doing that. That is a bad practice.
Definitely a bad practice.
I've been in situations where clients have asked me to do that, and I've had to flat out refuse. That is something I'm absolutely not doing.
Yeah, definitely not. And another reason that stratas tend to be not the best client sometimes, is just the simple length of time it can take to pay your providers.
Yeah.
Depending on if you're self-managed or if you have a management company. If you have a huge management company, your bills might get mailed away 1,000 miles away to get paid, and there's a time lag for the bills to get paid. So the upside of that is that they're familiar with the management company and they know that the check will be there on the 10th. It won't be there on the 1st like they want it.
Yeah.
Or the opposite, if you're self-managed, maybe your treasurer only sits down to write checks once every 2 weeks. And so, so the small companies, independent contractors, they know that, they may have a little wait for to get their bills paid with the Strata. But if you pay your bills on time, build up that relationship, then it's going to go nowhere but better.
Yep. Yeah. And jumping back to the property manager aspect of it is, again, if something does go wrong, if you're one strata with maybe you spend a few $1,000s a year, that might not be such a big issue for the service provider if something goes wrong. However, if they have a long-standing relationship with the management company, they're not looking at that one strata.
No.
They're potentially looking at losing that entire portfolio, which could be tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. So generally, they're a lot more amenable to taking care of issues or making the clients happy at the end of the day.
There's always going to be something go wrong, like you said, right? You can't promise you'll never mess up, but they can promise they'll make it right, whether they, forget to mow your lawn or forget to pick up your garbage on a long weekend or anything. If you've got that relationship, they'll make it up to you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's really about it as far as our list goes. So again, resources as far as good providers go, referrals, ask your neighbor if their lawn looks great, ask them who they're using. You use resources like Vasoa, Google, Yelp, that sort of stuff. Scope of work, keep it simple.
Keep it simple. Yeah.
Straightforward. Doesn't need to be a steel trap legally binding, but you want a good overview of what's expected. And actually, here's another good point too: is if you can appoint one person on the council, if you don't have a management, to be their point person. Because another thing that can happen in strata corporations with any kind of staff, whether it be on-site staff or contractors, is you can run into
somebody walking around with a notepad
where they're getting direction from multiple different people. And this even happens with owners that aren't on the council. You can have, again, using the landscaper example,
you missed the dandelion.
They're out there raking the lawn or trimming the flowers and that sort of stuff. And you have owners looking over their shoulder telling them what to do or where they should pay attention to, which is another partial reason why stratas aren't necessarily always the most desirable business.
Yeah.
But designate one person or maybe two people as the point person to deal with them.
To deal with them.
And it doesn't need to be one person for all your service providers. Work with your strengths. Typically, strata councils are going to have a group of people all with different backgrounds and experiences. So if you have somebody that's more mechanically minded, they can deal with that side of things.
That would be you.
I'm definitely not landscaping. I can't grow anything to save my life.
Well, neither can I, but I can tell when the grass needs cutting.
So.
But it's true. On a council, there's going to be 7 people, just like Ryan and I, and everybody has their different strengths for sure. And some people don't care a fig about the gardening, but maybe they care about the window washing contract. So let them be in charge of let them be the point person for the window washer.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, so that's really about it for us today. What kind of fun stuff do we have coming up? We're doing a seminar. No, we don't have any questions.
No questions.
That means it was a really good, we were very informative.
Answered all your questions. We ESP'd them all. So we do have a couple of events coming up. Next weekend, June the 8th, so a week and a bit from now, Ryan and I are doing a workshop together on the Saturday, working with Strata Manager.
Again, very relationship based.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to talk about
utilize that relationship.
Yeah, how to use the relationship. But if you're self-managed, maybe you're thinking of getting a management company, we'll talk about what to expect. And if you have a management company you're maybe not happy with, we'll talk about the process for changing. And
and that's actually a good little bit of a chat topic, and it came up at the panel a couple times, is what kind of options are out there for self-managed strata corporations, especially with the way that the strata management industry is here and the prices going up and the demand going up for good managers. What do you do if you're a smaller strata corporation?
So we'll definitely talk about all of that. It's a good topic. And so if you haven't had a chance to check it out, you can find all about it on our Vasoa homepage. And then another event we're having in June, June 23rd is a Sunday. We're doing a seminar. It's at 3 hours on a Sunday afternoon, and the topic is human rights and stratas.
Oh, I didn't even know about that
there
one.
you go.
Actually, that's news to me.
It just went live yesterday.
Oh, great.
So tickets are on sale now.
I'll have to book my table because I didn't get one for
Yes,
us Sunday.
book your table. And so our guest speaker will be Sean Smith, who's a Strata lawyer from White Rock. And he'll be talking all about human rights and the issues that can come up and the duty to accommodate and when you don't have that duty to accommodate.
Great.
Be really interesting.
Yeah, that's a very complicated topic actually. So if you can make it out to watch it, then I would definitely suggest that. Sean Smith does a lot of publications for Stratas and writing in the newsletters and very knowledgeable.
He gets all the legal points, but he does make it in plain language, which is very important.
Good.
Yeah, because Strata owners are not lawyers, that's for sure.
Yes. Great. Well,
I think we've done.
June 11th?
June 11th will be our next topic, and I forget what it was.
Oh, geez, now my mind just went blank too.
You didn't write it down.
No, we didn't write it down. Oh, we will announce it.
We will definitely announce what our next topic is going to be.
It's bugging me. Anyways.
We'll remember it the second we sign off,
Yes,
which
exactly.
will be very shortly. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on June 11th.
Thank you.